Okay, just to
So
be sure, Joe is on for a project?
Joe Tremelli is here because we have to discuss 136, 140 Croton Avenue. And so we just went through a kind of a lengthy seeker process. And so he's here just in case there are questions.
Cool.
Just in case.
We're live now, we're public, and it is recording, so.
Jamie Kane is trying to get in. I think you have to let her in.
Yep. I will bring her in right now. Okay, I think we have everybody.
Hi, Jamie.
Yep.
Mark Gorechny is not going to be here today. He had an emergency, so he's not going to make it.
So Jamie, did you hear back from Michael Spall? Okay, I sent him another email. I'm still not hearing from him either. Okay. We may have to reach out to him to see if he's still interested. Okay. We ready?
Ready? Sure.
Okay, here we go. Good evening and welcome to the Village of Ossining Zoning Board of Appeals regular meeting of April 12th, 2022. And due to the public health and safety concerns, the board is meeting via video conference using the Zoom platform in accordance with the governor's executive orders. There is no in-person public participation tonight. Rather, the public can watch the live meeting online through Zoom. Notice of tonight's meeting was published as required and posted on the village website. The web notice included instructions for members of the public to access the meeting and participate in any public hearings. Comments will only be taken during the public hearing portions of the meeting as usual. In order to participate, please do the following. Members of the public attending online via the Zoom app may use the raise hand feature at the appropriate time if you would like to make a comment. The feature is located at the bottom of your screen. Those attending via telephone can press the *9. The meeting host will see that your hand is raised or that you have pressed *9 and will unmute those waiting one at a time so that you can speak. Lastly, comments can be emailed during the meeting to Jaime Martinez, and that's J Martinez, MARTINEZ, at villageofossining.org. Any written comments will be read into the record. Please note that tonight's meeting is being recorded and a video and transcript will be provided at a later date. There are a few ground rules. In order to keep this meeting orderly and ensure we get a clear recording, please follow these ground rules. When you're given access to speak, please state your name and address. If you are speaking during the public hearing, please limit your comments to the matter which is the subject of the hearing. If any speaker is inappropriate, they will be immediately cut off and access removed. To the board members, please mute yourselves when you are not speaking. Also to the board members, I will call on you one at a time to speak to avoid everyone speaking at once. If you wish to speak at any time when I am not calling on you, please use the raise hand feature or literally raise your hand so that I can see and call on you. When we will use roll call voting for purposes of all board motions. This is to ensure that the record is clear. I want to thank everyone for continuing to come with us on the Zoom, and we will continue in this platform for the time being. For the benefit of the record, we are going to do a roll call to kick things off. When I say your name, please indicate that you are present. I guess I will do it, Amanda. Marlene Cheatham, Chair, I'm present. George Bailing.
Present.
Kevin Griffith? No. Okay. Kyle Beckley?
Here.
Bob Durayo?
Present.
Mark Gorechny is not with us tonight. Olga Montez?
Present.
Did I miss anybody? No. Okay. Also with us tonight are our building inspector, Joseph Agostinelli, our planning director, Jaime Martinez, our board secretary, Jamie Kane, our village land use attorney, Amanda Brosi, and Linda Whitehead. And also with us is Joe Chimelli, our consultant engineer. So let's get started. First on our agenda is the approval for the minutes of the March 8th, 2022 meeting. If everyone has had a chance to look at those minutes, may I have a motion to approve the minutes from the March meeting?
So moved, Bob.
And may I have a second?
It should not be George or, yeah, anybody else.
Second.
George, or
I didn't receive the minutes, so I can't second,
Second.
I don't think, right?
If you have.
George,
I seconded.
Okay, it's all done now.
Although you weren't there either.
you weren't there either.
So if you haven't reviewed Kyle, then maybe you should hold off, Marlene.
Okay, so we
We
can,
normally get them sent by email, but I didn't receive, so maybe I just need to go to the website.
Are they posted to the agenda, Jamie?
No, I did send them by email when I sent the link to the agenda.
Mhm.
I send it to your village email account, so,
That's why, got it.
okay.
Okay.
I normally get it in my regular email.
You okay with holding off for a month then? It's so that Kyle can review. Because you don't have a form to approve without. Kyle.
Right, without, okay, so that's fine with me. Is that okay, Jamie? Okay, so we will adjourn the approval of the minutes from the March 2022 meeting until the May meeting, and then we will approve April and May at that time. Okay, so we're up to new business of the board, 16 Campwoods Road, ZBA 05-2022. Giovan Baptista and Lauren Apollonio.
Yes, so 16 Campwoods, this project actually came in front of the board earlier last year for an interpretation. They are now, since they did not get an interpretation that helped their project, they're coming back and looking for a use variance and likely subsequent area variances if those use variances are granted. Property is currently a single parcel with a multifamily property. A house, I think it's about 140 years old. That house also has an office on the bottom floor, and in the backyard, the entirety of the backyard essentially is used as a yard for their construction business, along with multiple sort of garages holding vehicles and storing materials. The property's been in this operation, has been in operation in the current use configuration for at least 30 years. It may actually be more. Today, what they're going to need long-term for the entirety of the project, that will need approvals through the seeker process. They need to do environmental review. They would need use and area variances, and ultimately they're going to need site plan. So, the goal for today, I think, is to allow them to kind of come in and talk about their project and hopefully kick off lead agency. If the board wants to be the lead agency here, then they should either declare their intent to be lead agency so we can circulate a lead agency notice to all the other involved agencies. And if not, then, of course, we'll just get referred out to the planning board. So, and that's it. So I can bring everybody in now.
Mhm.
Okay.
Let's see. Let me raise my hand.
Okay.
Are you raising your hand, Bob?
Yeah, I am.
So
And
it should
you
just
may-
be Jim Anacargo as well.
Jim, and okay.
okay, Joe, before they start, Bob, you had something that you would like to say?
Yeah, just to clarify, they're not asking to do anything different than they've been doing for over 30 years. They're just asking to make it legal. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct. So to give a little context to the interpretation, because I'm not sure that everybody was here. I know some of you weren't for the interpretation. They came to the board prior to get an interpretation on the establishment of an existing pre-existing non-conforming use. The ZBA determined that it didn't meet the criteria for pre-existing non-conforming use. So the reason they're coming back here is to get a use variance. But no, they're not proposing any changes in the current use. Rather, they're just trying to legalize the use.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And are there any problems that have arisen that are there issues that we need to address regarding the 30 years they've been doing this? Are people complaining about what they're doing like that?
So I think, Bob, before we start asking the questions, let them give their presentation, because maybe their presentation will give all those answers.
Okay.
Absolutely, Chairwoman. So I just I could share my screen, correct?
Yes. The whatever you share, it has to have been already submitted to as materials. So just want to let you know if this is your first time doing it.
So
Are these previously submitted materials?
yes, and I was just going to do a Google
Yeah, okay.
image.
Yeah, so go ahead.
Thank you. Okay. You can see the Google view overview of the site. Yes. Okay. Good evening, Chairperson Cheatham and members of the board. My name is Dominique Albano, and I'm an associate at Sarin & Steinmetz. I represent the Apollonios in their application for a use variance this evening. I'm here today with the applicants, John and Lauren Apollonio, as well as Jim Anacargo from Croton Engineering. You're probably familiar with this matter, as Jaime had discussed. My colleague, David Steinmetz, has been working cooperatively with the village to achieve a solution for this for several years. At one point, we actually thought this might get addressed with the village by agreeing to a rezoning. That did not come to pass. In addition, my colleague Sam Taterka appeared before your board on October 24th, 2021 for a zoning interpretation. We were then told to pursue a use variance, and so pursuant to your direction, we are here before your board doing just that. Since then, we have been working with town officials, especially Jaime Martinez, in legalizing this existing use. For the benefit of the public, the property is located at 16 Campwoods Road. It is a 1.1 acre lot presently zoned in the R75 residential district. We are seeking use variance to legalize the existing construction yard operated by the Apollonios family-owned business in the rear of the property. So as of right now, the property has a multifamily home in the front with 5 units, a construction yard in the rear. The construction yard in the rear contains garages, storage containers, equipment, as well as construction supplies and materials used by the Apollonios for their own business. This use has been on the property since the 1970s. There has not been any improvement to the structures since John Apollonio's father purchased the property in 1978. I also think it's important to note that no construction activities occur on the property. There have been no complaints by any neighbors about its activities, and it's still been carrying on today. So as you already know, to approve a use variance, the applicant must satisfy all 4 factors of the use variance test established in New York Village Law 7-712B. The applicant must demonstrate that being required to use the property for something other than a construction yard and in accordance with zoning would result in an unnecessary hardship to that applicant. So before I get into the specific criteria for a use variance, I want to remind you of the context of the neighborhood. As I'm showing on the, as I'm sharing my screen, there are a mix of uses nearby. It's not just a single family residential home surrounding the property. For example, across the street is Lipton's Supermarket, the Tasty Table, and a synagogue. To the left of the property is DR Taxis and a single family home. On Campwood Road, alone, there is a gas station, a lawnmower service center, and a car service center, a lawnmower service center and a car service center, all within the abutting NC2 district. Also, it's incredibly difficult to see any of the construction uses or materials from the street. From the street, it looks like a normal home that is cohesive with the surrounding properties. So the first factor of the use variance test, the applicant cannot realize a reasonable return provided the lack of return is substantial, as demonstrated by competent financial evidence. As we have mentioned in our cover letter, we have provided ample financial evidence showing a lack of reasonable return if the applicant pursued making their property zoning compliant. We provided the cost of demolition as provided in the Valerdo proposal, the cost to construct 2 homes in the modular design exhibit, and the average home cost in Ossining from the Mancini Realty exhibit we provided. To make the property zoning compliant, there are only 2 options the Apollonios can pursue: subdivide the property into a flag lot and a front lot, or subdivide the property down the middle to support 2 single-family homes. We demonstrate these options in the Croton site plan exhibit. Jim, I'm going to have you explain your drawings to the board now.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. Hi, good evening, everyone. Jim Adicarico with Croton Engineering. So we were asked to show a maximum amount of lots that the property could be subdivided into. Essentially, it's 2. However, we showed 2 options. One option, which is the one you're looking at the conventional subdivision, would require removal of the existing 5-family house, all of the buildings obviously on site as well, and then that would provide 2 conventional single-family lots that both have frontage on Camp Woods Road and meet zoning. The second subdivision sketch plan we showed, that contemplates leaving the existing house and creating a single family house as a second lot. However, that really does require a flag lot type of layout. And I know that there's a specific process in the village code for approvals of flag lots. So that probably isn't the most desirable. However, that does allow for the existing dwelling to remain.
Okay. So as Jim described, the 2 subdivision options for the property are the flag lot option for subdivision and the conventional lot. I'll keep the conventional. We'll run the flag lot. So the flag lot must comply with section 270-27, where it needs to be suitable for the property and not result in any undesirable change to the neighborhood. This will require the demolition of existing garages that are in the rear of the property. The home would directly face the back of the existing home, and there would be no street frontage, and the cost of constructing a new home on the back of the property is upwards of $988,000. In addition, no other flag lots are in this surrounding area. As for the conventional lot, I'll bring that one back up on the screen. This would require demolition of the garages and the existing multifamily home, totaling $479,000. Construction of 2 family homes would be approximately upwards of $1.5 million. I'm going to put up, I have a comparable for the board just to make it easier for me to demonstrate the differences. I'm going to share this with you as well. So these are the two options that I was discussing. So we reached out to local real estate agencies, Mancini, and discussed with Mancini Realty and they provided us home comparables. Ultimately, they determined the homes in Ossining range between $445,000 to $613,000. If the Apollonios were able to subdivide the property and demolish the existing structures, construct 2 homes for the conventional lot, and sell at the highest market price, they would still be put in a deficit of $800,000. Similarly, for the flag lot option, the garages in the back of the property would need to be demolished. The existing home would need to be converted to a single family home, and a single family home would need to be constructed on the flag lot. It is unlikely the flag lot will sell for the $613,000 top end of the market. It still costs up almost $1 million to build a new home, and there are no flag lot comparables in the neighborhood to make a determination on this outcome. With the conventional options, applicant is likely to be put in a deficit between $100,000 to $300,000, depending on reconstruction of the property, conversion of the existing home, demolition of the garages, and the sale of the flag lot. Next, I'm going to discuss I'm just going to go to the next slide showing the property from Westchester GIS. So the next factor is the alleged hardship relating to the property in question is unique and does not apply to a substantial portion of the district or neighborhood. The applicants have operated this family-owned business since 1978. This property has been a part of their life for many decades. No other properties have this use, and it doesn't interfere with any neighboring properties. As we have mentioned, the Apollonios have not received any complaints from this use, and it's mainly a used as storage for construction work, not actual construction. This lot, as you see in the visual I'm sharing, is the biggest in the nearby area between Camp Woods Road, Upper Croton Avenue, and Bell Avenue. Just based off of this Westchester GIS, it is unlikely to see any other neighbors in the district to pursue a construction yard in this S75 district. Now on to the third factor. The requested use variance, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. As we've mentioned, this is merely to legalize an existing commercial use in the area that has been in existence for decades. The property abuts an NC2 district, which allows for outdoor storage as a permitted accessory use. This is very similar to the existing use that is occurring on the property right now. This neighborhood has a variety of uses, and the applicant's property has cohesively functioned with its fellow neighbors throughout the years. Therefore, as a result, approving this variance, there will be no change to the character of the neighborhood if granted. Lastly, the fourth factor, the alleged hardship has not been self-created. It is clear that inheriting a property and a business from your family that has existed for many decades is not a self-created hardship. The Apollonios did not create this problem, and we just want hardworking Ossining residents to be able to operate their business legally in your community. Thank you so much for listening, and we look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board before we open it up no more questions from the board?
No.
Yes. Bob or George?
No, question.
Okay, I said you on mute. Okay, so I know to this end that we need to, it's a use variance, but we also need to start the SEQRA process. So at this time, since that process has not started at all, I think it's best if we adjourn the public hearing portion. No, I'm looking at Amanda's.
We haven't opened it yet.
Okay, so but I think that we should.
If you want to have the board take a motion to declare its intent to serve as lead agency, we could do that. If you want to discuss what that means in this case to serve as lead agency, because since site plan approval is also required, the planning board could feasibly also be lead agency. So maybe talk about what that role, how you feel about taking on that role here. Because this applicant needs a use variance and it will also need area variances. So you do have a large
Right.
role in this process.
Yes, because there definitely will be area variances because at even looking at the plans that were shown, the garages are right up to the lot line. So there are definitely area variances that will be needed. There's going to be site plan approval. I think there's a couple of things running neck and neck. So I would entertain discussion from the board if you have any thoughts about becoming the lead agency or having the planning board step in as lead agency. It is, at this point, it could actually almost run either way, I think.
I'd like to hear what Jaime has to say about if the planning board took lead agency, why that would be better than having us.
So the only benefit of giving planning board lead agency in this instance would be that they're more familiar with doing seeker. That's really the only major issue. But in normal circumstances, you have construction that's going to happen, right? You have an actual development of the site, and they're kind of more robust seeker questions. In this instance, because this is an existing use and they're not proposing any changes to how the property is being used, there isn't as much for seeker to really look at here. It's important to go through the process. There's not going to be any excavation. There's no construction. There aren't those kinds of things. The biggest things that the planning board's ultimately going to get to look at are things like screening issues pertaining to site plan, and they're going to get a crack at that anyways. So in this instance, I think it would make more sense for the zoning board to have lead agency, but of course you can defer to the planning board if you prefer.
In that case, I'd like to make a motion that the zoning board of appeals take lead agency on this project.
I'd like to.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Kyle.
Oh, I was going to say second, but did you have something to say, Marlene?
I was just going to say if there's any other discussion from any other board members, but
Your motion should actually be, you would like to make a motion that you declare that the zoning board declares
zoning boards,
lead agency.
That's
Yeah,
what,
right.
that's
Have to
what
notice
we
it.
forwarded that.
Yeah.
And I just did we have George doing a second for that?
Yes,
I think George or Kyle.
George.
I think it was George.
Okay.
I didn't
So-
change my name.
All right, do you want to do a roll call, Marlene?
Yes.
Would you like me to do it?
That's probably cleaner. Yes.
Okay. Marlene Cheatham,
Aye.
Kyle Beckley,
Aye.
George Bailing,
Aye.
Bob Doraya,
Aye.
and Olga Montez.
Aye.
Okay. And can I just make a quick note? I see that there's an attendee who's asked a question in the question section. Please note that that function does not allow your questions or the answers to be added to the record, and we discourage use of that function. Please don't use it. You'll be able to ask questions or make comments when and if the board opens a public hearing. So we've said that in prior meetings, we'll say it again, so please just take note.
Mhm.
Okay, so you
so-
passed the lead agency.
So as we are declaring the zoning board as lead agency, we would notice the other boards. I know this will have to move forward with that process. I think I'm asking at this time that we adjourn this application to move forward to the, I don't even know, May meeting. And at that time, we can open the public. I'm sorry, yes, Kyle.
I was I was going to say a question just to give the Apollonios time, because this is a question I would have asked next time anyway, would be do you plan, if this is approved, to do any additional construction and/or for Marlene, Amanda, or Jaime? Do any changes they intend to do, even if they don't declare them, have to be re-reviewed because of the variances they have to be granted?
No, they don't intend on doing any further construction. Could they speak freely? About it?
Yeah, I think this was noted in the beginning that this variance was to bring the existing use into compliance. It has been going on for several years, and the use variance is not in compliance with the area. They don't have an existing use variance, so it wasn't to make changes. It was actually to just bring the property up to code. And I think by their paperwork and by the presentation tonight, that was made clear. So I don't believe that there's any new construction or anything else going on with this property. It's just that it is they need a use variance that was never codified by the village at any time.
Yeah, I do want to kind of add that if they get the use, if they get the variance permitting the use, then there is, certainly nothing stopping them from expanding that use further onto their property. There are parts of the property that currently aren't being used that way. And I think the site plan would, the site plan review process by the planning board would look to work out, what can be done on the property and where it can be done. So I think that there probably will be some changes based off of how they've got it now, ultimately. And certainly, I think it's reasonable to expect that a business changes its needs over time, and they may need to make amendments to their site plan, over the next 30 years as they continue to run their family business. So I would expect changes, but there are none proposed right now.
The only thing I want to add, just to the board's aware, a lot of the structures that are part of the site plan and what may need variances must have been constructed and evolved over time, because we don't have records of some of these accessory buildings. So, part of approving the use variance, there will be a number of area variances for those buildings that were constructed that we have no records of any permits ever issued for them. And the only second thing I would say is the question that was asked about any complaints. I don't know what members were here when the interpretation was brought up, but there were complaints brought up about the property from the village going back to the 1990s. And the village does have a number of violations and complaints about this use for a number of years. But I'm glad that we're at this point here, that it's in front of the zoning board for the board to make a determination on this. But this has been something that the village has been trying to, rectify for a long period of time. So it's not something that's recent, it's something that's been over the years.
I would only add to that the applicant did do notice to its neighbors, and we received one phone call from a neighbor asking questions about what was going on. That was not a complaint, though. They said they didn't have any issues. They were just trying to find out whether they were looking to expand the use or not. I think they were concerned about any expansion of the use, but they weren't filing any complaints. That's in the most recent time. Obviously, Joe's been dealing with this problem for many years, and so he's got a longer history with it. But there are no recent complaints within the last few months as a part of the noticing process.
And I just want to add on to that, and Jaime, and address Mr. Agostinelli's point. We were when I stated that there haven't been any complaints by neighbors, not specifically the town, because we want to work with the town, and we have shown our dedication to legalizing or working to legalize this use. And as a family-owned business and being residents for so many years, like, they've committed thousands of tax dollars to this town, and this is their home, and they want to do what's best for the village and get through this process and hopefully get a use variance for their existing use since the 70s.
Thank you for that, but all the violations that we have on record, we basically holding complaints over the years. So I'm not saying that any of these are recent complaints that if you're saying that you've sent out notices to neighbors. But when we do follow up on complaints, the majority of time there are complaints that are submitted to the building.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I saw Mr. Durayo, you have, or Mr. Bailing, you have your hand up.
Yes. Are there people here to speak on this tonight? And if so, is there a reason we shouldn't open a public hearing so they can be heard this evening?
You can do so if you'd like.
We can do so. I know that this process is going to carry through for a while as we go through the secret process. So there will be opportunity for the public to speak moving forward. But it really is, you know, I will leave it up to the members if they would like to hear from the public now or to wait as we go through the process. If they're asking questions about the site plan, that is actually the planning board and not our part of our purview. So I want to tread lightly.
So Jaime, are there?
I would, yeah, so I'm gonna, just to add to that, Marlene, you do have to look at ultimately setback variances.
And that will come.
That will certainly, you have the ability to require screening and the additional screening to some of these uses as a part of that. So I do think that there is some overlap between what you need to deal with ultimately if you do decide to permit the use variance that overlap with site plan.
But I think it to the board right now, in front of us right now, is to actually look at the use first and decide if that use is something that we would grant. If the use is not, go ahead, Amanda.
I'm not trying to interrupt you. You're right in terms of the zoning board's process, use variances come before area variances. But for secret purposes, the action as a whole is the use variance, the area variances, everything they're proposing. So you kind of have to think of the whole action when considering if there will be significant adverse environmental impacts before you even think about whether or not they meet the use variance criteria.
I'm sorry. I just had one quick question. Because we weren't able to make full determination of the required area variances, would that require the applicants to have to file, if they get the use variance, a separate application for those, or they could be added as part of this application at another point? Would they have to re-notice to neighbors?
I think that what we discussed was that if they were successful in obtaining the secret determination that they need and then the use variance determination, then ultimately they would need to file full area variance applications at a later date. And then yes, they would then need to renotice the neighbors at that point, whenever that might be. Sorry.
So Amanda, we have submitted an area variance application to the board.
Okay.
But we were told that this would come first and then be pursued later on, but the board should have access to our plans and our cover letter addressing all the area variances for your review.
Okay, yeah, I did see that you've submitted some very detailed topo surveys and all that, which show dimensions and heights and all that. I didn't see the actual area variance application, so I just assumed that based on my last conversation with David, which was that you didn't need to submit the full application packages, that you hadn't done that yet. So, you know, now that you have done that, if it's all in, the only problem is Joe's referral letter does not set out all of your area variances.
Right. We could refine to whatever he provides us.
Yeah, we'll have to go over the application. I think some of the information that was in there addresses some of the variances that are required, but there are other aspects of the zoning code that we will need certain calculations for, like the number of the percentage of building in the required rear yard area. But we can go over all of those things so that once you file the complete application, we'll have all the variances required.
Okay, so well, we have filed a complete application, so we would love to discuss this with you.
Okay.
Myself, David and I, and Jim.
Okay, we can do that. So we have all the variances that are required listed.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay, so that
Thank you.
means that we have the full information that the board needs to do the secret review, which is all we need at this point.
Mhm.
So do we need a motion to adjourn this till next month?
Did Kyle have-
I believe that the first question was, are we, do we want to open up the public hearing at this point?
No. No.
You do have a couple of hands raised.
My personal feeling is that we should open the public hearing because we have the option of hearing what we invited people to come to comment on tonight without them knowing that we were not going to give them the option to speak. Because we can also, after we hear this public hearing, we can adjourn it until next month and continue it. Is that correct?
Yeah, I agree with
Yeah.
Kyle.
I agree with Kyle.
Yeah.
Okay, so may I have a motion?
Motion to open the public hearing.
Second, Kyle.
Second. If there is no objection to opening the public hearing, by unanimous consent, the public hearing is now open. We do have people who are here to speak.
We have 8 Bell. Okay, I'm gonna allow them to talk. They don't seem to go. 8 Bell, if you could please list your name and address for the record.
I'm not sure. Are you talking to me?
No,
no,
actually,
that's Chris.
8 Bell. Sorry. 8 Bell's in now. 8 Bell, can you take yourself off mute?
Hello.
Hello?
Hi,
Yes.
this is A. Hi. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hello? Oh,
Can you
hi.
give your name and address, please? For the record?
Yeah, I'm Edward Kelly. I live at 8 Bell Avenue. I want to apologize. This is my first Zoom meeting ever, okay? So I don't really know what the heck I'm doing. I didn't understand a lot of what's going on. But I noticed that the diagram you showed, my question is only about one part of the property, which is the very back of the property. I'm sure the owners know where the bamboo used to be. We're directly below that. That is basically, our backyard and about 5 other backyards kind of abut on that. And I didn't really understand whether that's part of what we're talking about or not, and what they plan on doing there.
So we're not planning on redeveloping the back of the property. The current state and the conditions are how we're pursuing to keep it. And that's why we're pursuing a use variance. The options that we're providing, Lauren, do you want to speak?
I just want to say something because he might be, hi, how are you, neighbor?
Hi.
So I just wanted to say, I wanted to let you know that the reason why that bamboo is now gone is because we were trying to clean it up, because we know that so many people abut to the back of the property, and we're trying to freshen it up so you're not looking at necessarily
overgrown.
an overgrown
Right,
bamboo.
right.
So we're not, we didn't clear it because we want to build something. We cleared it because we want to have happy neighbors.
Oh, that works for me.
I'm glad, neighbor. Now we're gonna have steak.
Wait a minute, I've got a, what?
If they sell the property though, will that
Oh.
grandfather in other?
Oh, yeah, my daughter said, if you were to sell the property, would that be grandfathered in, or would other people be able to build back there? Because it is like a backyard for.
So I gotta be really honest with you. Oh, sorry.
That's
Okay.
an attorney
Okay,
question. That's not
sorry.
us.
It's okay.
We're
And
not selling
Amanda-
it.
I don't want to sell it.
My son
Okay,
moved
we
out of
have,
the
since
business.
everybody is
Neither do
talking
we.
at the same time, I'm going to
Alright.
stop the talking at the same time because it's hard for everybody to hear, number one. And number two, I know that there's a question on the floor about selling the property, but we're really not here to discuss what will happen in the future. We are here to discuss the use of the property that is before us right now, and it is to stay as it is existing. And that's what they have bought before us. Is there anything else, sir?
No, that's
Okay.
fine. That's what I was I just didn't understand a lot of what was discussed earlier, that's all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I also see there is a Chris with their hand raised. If you would unmute yourself. Chris?
And am I
Yes.
unmuted? Okay, sorry.
Yes, you are.
I do have a question. There was two options presented for what to do with the property. There is the third option of leaving the house and not having a construction yard, is there not?
Yes.
So there is a
Well-
third option, not just that the two houses can be built, but it can be just that there is no construction yard there and it is a multifamily house with a big yard.
Right. But so when we're talking about if they stop this construction yard, it interferes with their family business that has been carrying on for many years, and it would put them at a deficit to stop using the property just as a multifamily home. So as of right now, they only generate $3,800 a month from just the multifamily home. So if they were to get rid of their construction yard and say, take it somewhere else, they would be putting themselves in a position where they would lose a lot of money and it would impact the family more severely than for the towns to carry on with operating their construction, well, just holding storage of their construction materials in the yard.
Okay. I have a couple of other questions. I know you said this is current use and not future use, but if the current use has not been in compliance for decades and everyone approves that this current use that has not been in compliance is okay, it does affect future use if they sell the property. Because once they get this current thing, they could turn around, they could have some kind of hardship, need to sell the property. And then what kind of construction yard could be put there? So I know you say that this isn't about future use, but future use has to be considered when you're making a decision about something that has been decades out of compliance.
So I understand what you're saying. And so to determine if a use variance is approved, it has to abide by the 4 factors that I discussed before. But also in addition, it's part of New York case law that a use variance, if it's non-compliant, it can't be expanded.
Hold on, Dominique.
Yes.
I apologize. I don't think that this is appropriate.
Yeah, I was.
An answer.
Okay.
I think, at this point, we can't, I think I know Dominique was trying to answer this, but, and I'm not, I'm sorry, Ms. Chris, can you give us your full name and your address?
Sure.
Because I don't believe that's on record.
It's Christine Dorio and I live at 32 Campwoods Grounds.
Okay, so Ms. Dorio, I think that you're asking questions that we cannot at this point in time are determinative by this board, but if there are other questions that you would like to put on record that we can kind of vet out as we move forward.
Okay, the notice says that, all are invited to attend the public meeting and be heard on this matter. So I've never been to one of these before. I assumed that this is what this was for. So I apologize if it is not. As the notice says it is.
But as you were listening to the meeting at this point in time, we will be going into the CEQA process, which will take us further into looking at this project and determining the full use of the project. So it will be adjourned until next month at this time. Joe?
I know, I think that maybe, I'm not sure, maybe the question would be is if the use variance was granted, it stays with the property. So it's not that if the owner was to leave that the variance is now null and void, the variance stays with the property. So if there was a new owner, they'd be able to use the property the same way that the zoning board would grant the use.
Yes.
I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that's variances are granted and stay with the property, not with just.
Similar to what I said earlier, if you make a decision on the property, It runs with the
It
property.
stays with the property. It runs with the property, not the owner, not the person.
Right.
Okay.
It is very specific to what they're applying for, to the very
Yes.
specific application that's being made.
Okay, thank you.
Is it-
I can, if I can just offer, if you have questions about the process, feel free to reach out to the planning department. So you can certainly email me at jmartinez@villageofosney.org. You can call the office and I can let you know a little bit more about the process, but it's a multi-step process involving 2 separate boards for the review. And so it might be helpful for you to just give me a call so I can explain to you how that review process works and the numerous opportunities that you're going to have to provide comments on the application.
That would be great. Thank you very much. I'm finished.
Thank
have
you.
more people with their hand raised. You have a Nicole Young, 3.
I know I will short and simple because I think a lot of my answers, or my questions rather, were answered. But
Okay, before you start, can you give us your name and your address?
Nicole Young, 19 Campwoods Grounds.
Thank you.
I did not realize how much of a property that was. You know, I'm obviously concerned about potholes and stuff like that with the heavy equipment and stuff moving back and forth, but that is something apparently that has been going on. So I will leave it at that. No issue with the multi-dwelling issue and stuff like that, but I definitely look forward to being part of this again. This was my first time too. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Jaime, is there anyone else out to speak on this property? No. Okay. If there's no one else to speak on this application at this time.
One more. Somebody else just raised their hand. Sorry.
Okay.
Elaine Casey.
Good evening, Ms. Casey. Can you unmute?
Yes, I am unmuted. Good
Can you give
evening,
us your name and your address?
Elaine Casey. I'm at number 2 Campwoods Grounds. I just wanted to understand if the 2 options that you showed for constructing like a 2-family property, is that ruled out?
I think, okay, I think there's some confusion in what was presented as options. I believe that they were options in the event that they did not have this use variance. So it was not that is an option for something that they are going to do at this time. And I think Dominique, you can kind of chime in if you'd like, just for a moment, just to clarify that. But it is not an option as to something that they are planning to do at this point in time.
Very good. That answers my question.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you. That was it for me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Jaime, is there anyone else who would like to speak on this? Okay, if there is no one else to speak on this at this time, then may I have a motion to adjourn the public hearing at this time?
Motion
So
to
moved.
adjourn the public hearing until next month.
Second.
Okay. I think the motion was made by Bob and seconded by George. Okay.
That's it.
If there is no objection to adjourning the public hearing by unanimous consent, the public hearing would be adjourned. As we have motioned or agreed to take this through the secret process and become the lead agency, may I have a motion to adjourn ZBA 05-2022, 16 Campwoods Road, until the May meeting?
So moved, Kyle.
Second, Bob.
And I believe we should do a roll call on this.
Marlene Cheatham,
Aye.
Kyle Beckley,
Aye.
George Bailing,
Aye.
Bob Durayo,
Aye.
Olga Montez.
Aye.
Okay, thank you all for coming. We will see you again next month. Or you will hear from the office, one or the other. But we will be
Thank you,
moving forward.
Chairwoman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice seeing everyone. I'll be on the next agenda later.
Okay, okay. Okay, we are on ZBA 06-2022 8 Osage Drive. The applicant request is seeking a variance for proposed parking spaces. Is anyone here to speak on that property?
Yes. We have JB Hernandez.
Good evening.
Hello, how are you, Mr. Hernandez?
Very good. Yourself?
I am well.
I have, if I can share the screen.
Before you start, Jaime, could you just run through a brief update on the, and I'm going to say the properties in that area, because I believe at some point there were some, the village made some determinations with the properties as far as auxiliary apartments and things in that area.
I'm not sure.
Am I correct on that one?
I'm not sure about the auxiliary apartments, but there have been other instances where these kinds of setbacks, I believe, have been made. I think that actually Joe Agnelli is probably better informed about some of these applications. So I don't know if Joe wants to talk about that. But essentially what they're trying to do, this applicant wants to close what's currently a one-car garage and convert it to a bedroom, and is looking to reconfigure the driveway to be more conforming, so that it has it would meet the side yard setback where it doesn't currently. And I think there's some precedent for that in the neighborhood, but maybe Joe Agnelli can give a little bit more information.
Yeah, there's been a couple of homes. I think actually even the home next door to this one that proposed the same thing with the zoning board. They closed an existing garage that was part of the house to add a living space, because I think a lot of the homes on Osage are ranches and very small. And they added square footage, but the only place to park would be to create parking in the front yard. And I know there was a couple of variance applications over the last couple of years that were brought in front of the zoning board, the same request at this application. And in this one, I believe they're actually removing some of the asphalt, so it may actually be less impervious surface coverage than what's there currently. But it's just taking a parking space right now that's compliant in that zone district and requesting for 2 parking spaces in front, which require variances. Or at least 1 variance, I should say. 1
variance. Okay, thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe and Jaime. Mr. Hernandez?
Yeah, so kind of echoing what has been said already. This is our client, Manuel Ayora, has converted the 1-car garage into an additional room for the house. Most of these houses in the neighborhood have the same situation. Also here, as you can tell on the drawing, we are reducing the amount of asphalt, especially the width of the driveway as it came into the street. And we are locating the 2 parking spaces, an additional parking space. There was already 1 there in the front. As per the next door house, when we look at the picture, this house in this area here it was given exactly the same variance in 2019. That was 6 Osage Drive West. And it was in front of your board, same situation. They have completed closing the garage, and they needed to have a variance because now the parking it will be in the front yard. So this is a very, this is the room that they're creating. These houses are all very small in size. They don't have a second floor. Putting a addition on any other place of the house, it will create another zoning issues. It may also be very expensive and change the architecture for the neighborhood. So the changes in the neighborhood, they're all going to be, all the houses kind of on this side of the road are kind of the same. And that's about it. This is.
I think in your zoning calculation there, I think you have the livable floor area where we're supposed to provide 800. Current house is what, 915?
Yes.
So with the garage, you would increase the house to about 1,100 square feet.
Yes.
So yeah, that was the applications are because the homes currently are very small space.
And also, as it was pointed out before, that we are actually reducing the amount of impervious area that is on the place. And we are, the existing driveway was too close to the property line. So we are moving it now so it complies with the zoning for the S50.
Okay, are there any questions from the board?
We need to open a public hearing on this?
Yes, but I was just making sure that there were no questions from the board. If there are no questions from the board, we can entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
Motion to open the public hearing, Bob.
Second, George.
If there's no objection to opening the public hearing, by unanimous consent, the public hearing is now open. Is there anyone from the public to speak on this?
We have a Sue Donnelly.
Progress.
Please state your name and address.
My name is Sue Donnelly. I'm at 17 Susquehanna Road, Ossining, New York. And I just want to say, seeing the pictures today makes all the difference in the world, because the way, and I read the proposed parking spaces located in the front yard, I was thinking that they were going to add to their already 4-spot parking on this very small house. So I'm very pleased with the way that it was presented. Mr. Hernandez, thank you very much. And I don't have any more further comments, but as long as they stay within those plans, we're fine.
Thank you, Ms. Donnelly.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else to speak on this project?
We have an Amy Hopkins. Amy Hopkins, if you could take yourself off mute.
Hello, Ms. Hopkins. Can you give us your name and address? Can you unmute?
Amy, unmute.
Sorry, I
go.
apologize. I was having a hard time unmuting. This is Amy Hopkins, 9 Osage Drive West. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I echo my neighbor Sue Donnelly's comments. I was very concerned about the amount of parking spaces that are already there, but actually your presentation was very good and I understand the situation a lot more clearly now. So thank you very much. I did just want to point out for the good of the order that in some of these site proposal documents that are uploaded to the village planning site, your site location is actually 18 Osage Drive and not 8. So going forward, you just might want to correct that. So anyway, thank you very much for your time.
Nice catch, Amy.
Thank you, Ms. Hopkins. Is there anyone else to speak on this project? Okay, Jaime, if there is.
Nobody else? Yeah?
Okay, if there's no one else to speak on this project, I would entertain a motion from the board to close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing at this time. Bob.
May I have a second?
Second, Kyle.
If by unanimous consent, if there is no objection, the public hearing is closed at this time.
You got to go through the steps now.
Yes, we do. So let us go through the process of looking at this particular application before us. Ready?
Okay. An undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the area variance.
I say no because they're creating more air distance, pervious surface between the other property and theirs by shifting the driveway, and they're not increasing the size. So I'd say no.
I agree with Kyle.
I agree with Kyle.
The benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Bob.
I said, I don't think so. I think that what they've really taken the time and thought this through. I think this is the best solution to their situation.
I agree.
The requested area variance is substantial.
Just real quick, I wanted to remind Olga, because I'm not sure if she knows, but she's a voting member tonight. And so you know, you're a voting member today. So. She
has been voting.
Thank you. Okay, I wasn't sure. Yeah, I wasn't looking up at the time of the vote. So.
So can Joe or someone confirm the actual numerical amount of the variance so that the board is aware?
There is parking in the front. There is no numerical.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for the reminder.
Right.
Okay.
So as this is changing the actually dimension of the parking, it is actually just shifting it slightly, but removing some of the asphalt to actually clean up the site a little bit, but not increasing increasing by one parking space in front of the home is the additional parking that they are actually seeking, I believe, at this time.
Correct.
Correct.
All right, the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district.
No, it'll slightly improve it just because the impervious surface doesn't go to the property line.
Yeah, I agree with Kyle.
And the alleged difficulty was self-created.
I'm going to say yes, but I don't think it's important. They are choosing to add a room. They're not being forced to, so it is a choice. But I don't think it's a negative.
Again, I agree.
It's not. Yes, I agree with Kyle as well, but it's not determinative in this instance. It is their choice to add to increase the square footage of the livable space in the home. And yes, it is self-created, but no, it is not determinative.
All five.
Thank you. As we have gone through the factors as we have listed them, may I have a motion to approve ZBA 06-2022?
So moved with the correction of the proper address.
Second, George.
It's listed as 8 Osage on our
But it's actually
paperwork.
18, right?
No,
No, it is 8.
It's 8. It's in
Oh, it is
the,
8.
in the
Okay,
tax,
It is 8.
tax map. We can change the tax map. That was the location.
okay. In that case, motion to approve.
Second,
So it has been moved and seconded. Roll call vote.
Marlene Cheatham,
Aye.
Kyle Beckley,
Aye.
George Bailey,
Aye.
Bob Duraya,
Aye.
and Olga Montez.
Okay, motion carried. JB, have fun.
Thank you. See you in a little bit.
You're back.
Yes.
I believe ZBA 09-2022 and ZBA 12-2022 have been adjourned to the May meeting? Or do we have to adjourn them to the May meeting?
I'm sorry, are we,
They didn't notice properly, so they are,
There,
no need for you to take a motion to adjourn them.
okay. So we are up to ZBA 21-2021, 136, 138, 140 Croton Avenue. And I am going off for this one.
okay, so George, I think you're in charge. Or no, I'm sorry, Bob, you're in charge.
Bob's in charge.
Jaime, do you want to give us the update on where this project is at, an overview for the public?
Yeah, so the 136, 140 Croton Avenue, the application has completed their seeker review with the planning board. And this application has come before this board already to talk about the variances that are in front of them. Initially, it came in with multiple variances. It still has most of them, but not all of them. At the beginning, it came in with an area variance requiring adjustments for the minimum habitable square footage for the apartment size for the proposed mixed-use building. However, this issue was corrected, and now all of the units comply with the minimum habitable size. They requiring a variance for the maximum building coverage percentage. The proposed mixed-use building, the proposed building has 67.6% building coverage, but it's only permitted to have 50%. The lot coverage, however, is allowed to have 80%, and it does not have any issues there. So it is in conformance with the impervious coverage. It's just not in conformance with the building size coverage. Let me take JB off. Hold on. Okay. The project requires area variance for the number of off-street parking spaces. The required parking is 121 spaces, but the proposed is 79. Part of the seeker review had an independent review of the parking study that was submitted by the applicant. That review was done by BFJ Planning, and they determined that the 79 spaces that were to be provided would be sufficient to meet the demand. Obviously, that's demand is, a question of whether it's sufficient. It's not a question of the variance. That's up for the zoning board. But the BFJ felt like it would be sufficient based on the use of the property as a senior affordable housing project. It also requires a variance for the maximum height and stories of the building. Permitted in this district are 3 stories and 36 feet. The proposed project is about 3.5 stories. The maximum height from the corner with the highest amount of variance is 53.3 feet, which is a 17-foot 3-inch variance from the permitted of 36 feet. However, the variance is not uniform throughout the building footprint. So there are parts of the property where the building is compliant with the 36 feet. And obviously the corner where it's most non-compliant is the northwest corner where it's 53 feet, 3 feet inches with the 17-foot 3-inch variance from that. It also requires a variance from the build to line. This variance is actually a creation of the form-based code as it's in conformance with the underlying NC2 district. The NC2 district has a setback of no more than 15 feet. The building as proposed is 0 feet on the northwest corner from the property line. Under the form-based code, the build to line requires a setback of at least 10 feet. So in this instance, 0 is proposed and 10 is required, so we need a 10-foot variance. And so now that seeker is done, the planning board or the zoning board can take up these variance questions. And so we have the applicant here to talk about that.
Is someone here from the applicant to speak?
Yeah.
Then
Put 'em on.
let's have them.
A whole lot of somebody's. We have Michael Spall as well, so I'm going to bring Michael in. Michael Spall is the second alternate for the ZBA. Before I bring in the applicant, Michael, can you turn on your camera and your microphone?
Yeah, good evening, Jaime.
Hi, everybody, this is Michael Spall. He's the new ZBA alternate. This is his first time coming here. So
Welcome, Michael.
I've been listening for the last 45 minutes or so, and I just feel like I need to observe this meeting since it's my first one.
Sounds good. With that, I'm going to start bringing in the applicant's team.
What's happening?
Franz? Open your mic, Franz.
Hello.
Hello, Franz.
Hi.
Tell us a story.
Oh, well, Jaime's bringing in the rest of our team here. We've got quite a few people coming on.
Yeah.
I think Michael Zarin is probably taking, yeah, there he is. He's taking the lead and will introduce the project for now.
Is Joe here today? I don't see him on the.
He should be on.
He's there somewhere.
Zoom user, I guess.
Maybe.
Yes, Joe.
That's him.
Okay. I think this is everybody. Let me know if anyone from your team is missing.
No, I believe we're all here. The only one I don't see, Jaime, is Gina Martini. Do you see her at all?
She's here. She's right next to you on the screen, in my screen.
That's a good thing. I feel better. Okay, would you like us to proceed, Mr. Chairman? Yes. So we're back with you after these many months. We had a very rigorous process going through the impacts of the project as proposed. We were very happy to receive a negative declaration by the planning board, and we're happy and we're here tonight we're hopeful to move it forward tonight with a vote on this project. We want to get into the financing of this in the next several months. So we're excited about the project. We think we've done everything we can possibly do to mitigate the impacts, whether it be to the neighbors, traffic, parking, you name it. We have studied it. And we're willing to work with this board as we have before in every way we can. I want to defer to my attorney, Mike Zarin, and then to our architect, Jacqueline, and that should tie it up pretty much in a bow.
Good evening, everyone. I think Joe pretty much articulated, and I thought Jaime did a nice job also. I think I don't know whether this is our third or fourth time before you, so we have already presented most of the variances and rationale and have discussed them and gone through them with you. And if any of you have read the negative declaration resolution with the planning board, we went through each of these features and elements ad infinitum in discussing the height and the various issues and whether they would result in any significant adverse impact. And I think, I think the findings were pretty unanimous and strong from the planning board that they found they would not, and understood the rationale for where we do have these deviations. So as Joe said, we're under contract to unfortunately close next month. It's very important for us to hopefully have this board's confirmation and approval before we do that, because we will have not finished our site plan yet, but having received a negative declaration, and that was again done over 2 meetings, and Amanda and Jaime can attest to the detail each element went through. We come before you, I think, hopeful and confident that we've really met the standards and we've met the criteria necessary for this board to act. And that's our hope. So good to be back, and I'll turn it over to Jacqueline with respect to any of the technical issues and any questions.
Thank you, Michael. Good evening, Chairman and the rest of the board. I just wanted to reiterate that we have removed the livable and habitable variance, as Jaime mentioned. I know that was a large concern for the board. So when we met with you all back in February, we walked you through that and demonstrated that we were able to achieve compliance for every single unit within the building. So I think that was a big concern of the board, and we're happy that we were able to satisfy that. Knowing that this has remained open for a couple months, I'm just going to share screen, if that's okay, walk us through the 5 remaining variances quickly, and then we will take any questions from the board. So I'm going to start with the 10-foot setback variance. As Jaime mentioned when he was running through the variances earlier, we are proposing to build up to the property line at the corner of Prospect and Croton Avenue. We were able to achieve the 10-foot requirement for the remaining portions of the lot. We felt that in this corner, it was important to keep with the character of the neighborhood and maintaining the requirement from the curb line back to the building itself. And so that's what we're proposing in this situation. I would like to point out that if we were not submitting under the form-based code and we were submitting under the regular zoning code, there's actually no requirement for any setback along the front. So we think that we are, in character with the rest of the neighborhood when it comes to our proposal. In addition to that, as Jaime mentioned, we are looking at 17.6% variance for the coverage for the building. We have maintained all of the parking within the structure. So that's a big part of this. So along the lower level, and then there's an upper level of parking. We are accommodating 79 spaces. The BFJ memo went through, and I know that he was here to present to you all that we have satisfied their requirements. So we are looking for a variance of 39 off-street parking spaces. The last item is the height, and as Jaime mentioned, that comes into two specific areas where we're looking at both the stories and the height itself. So we have half a story variance we are requesting. And then, as Jaime mentioned, the 17-foot 3-inch variance, that is the worst case scenario. We were asked to explore this under 4 different methods. The 17-foot 3 yielded the highest requirement for variance. So I believe that's what the village is deciding to proceed with. Am I correct? I believe that's the rationale behind that. So the 17-foot 3 is in one corner. And moving on from that, everything is lower. As Jaime mentioned, there's many parts of the building that comply. And I think that wraps up any of the variances. Are there any questions from the board?
Thank you, Jacqueline. Are there any questions from the board members? Olga, do you have any comments or questions? Kyle?
No, Bob.
I don't have questions because the last meeting was very informative. I just want to make a comment for the record in that the way that you all, the team that's doing this building and all the capacities handled this, I think has been exceptional. You've taken a lot of the feedback into consideration, and you're not going to be able to do everything that everybody asks, but adding the trees to the rear and increasing the size for sight lines, all of the discussion and demonstration about the Department of Transportation sight lines on the road and looking at mitigating factors there, making what I think is very dramatic changes to livable and habitable space in the building to accommodate other changes. For me, that satisfies personally everything that was outstanding with the variances. Just a comment.
Thank you, Kyle. I appreciate that.
George?
I agree with you.
I can't say it any better than Kyle. I am very impressed with these applicants and the way they responded to the comments from the board and from the public. I think they have gone above and beyond trying to listen and comply. So I'm very happy. Do we need to open a public hearing at this time, I believe, right?
Yes.
Can I have a motion to open a public hearing?
So moved, Kyle.
Now, second, George.
Sorry, Olga.
So Kyle made the motion and George seconded. Is anybody-
The only thing that I just want to bring up, if there's changes to any of these in the variances requested, just for record, I haven't reviewed them to give you an updated new referral letter, so.
Okay.
So we're gonna have to provide that for you at some point for the board to verify that the variances that you're stating that are only required are actually those, because we have to review them.
I understand. We have a motion and a second on the floor. If I believe we can go with unanimous consent if no one has any problem with that. And the public hearing is therefore now open. Jaime, who do we have? Jaime, you're muted.
We have no hands raised.
Great, then at this
Can I
time, I'd
just
like the
ask
motion.
real quick, Bob? Can I just clarify quickly what Joe's comment was? I was trying to quickly pull up the referral letter and I'm not able to do it that fast. Is it possible to pull it up, Jaime?
Yeah, I have it, yeah.
What?
So the referral letter, yeah, I'm pulling it up right now. The referral letter actually doesn't, explain what the specific variances are. So what I did was I kind of went through the details. There are drawings that have most of the information in regards to the plans themselves have the bulk of the detail on what the size of those variances are.
Well, he has the categories of variances on the referral letter.
He does. He has all of the categories of the variance.
Except that they're saying they don't need any more of the habitable square footage and things of that sort. We have to calculate that out stuff.
We
verify
that was the case like a couple months ago.
Yeah, we did go over this. I don't know if you remember, Joe, but they
Yeah.
submitted unit sizes and you did check them. I was there with you.
And Joe, you confirmed they were in compliance.
Okay, well, we'll check again. We didn't
All right.
update the referral letter.
At this stage of the game of investment, you know,
I think it's okay that the referral letter says more than is required and then they don't actually need that variance. It's a problem when you need a variance that's not on the
Right.
referral letter.
Correct. So I'm assuming that it's just that the variance numbers are reduced, there's none that needed to be added, correct?
Yeah,
I think
you
that's what
didn't put any-
Amanda's saying.
Sorry?
No, I think Amanda, that's what you said. There's no new variances as opposed to fewer variances.
Right, and we didn't actually put any like numeric measurements on the referral letter. It just is the build to line, the height, stories, the coverage.
Yeah, so these are the unit sizes here that they, that they came through and showed. There were only a couple that needed some changes and they showed the adjustments here. So you can see they don't include closets, they don't include bathrooms. So that's the parts they're not allowed to add, and that's they sort of showed the layouts here. So I think certainly Joe, it makes sense to check, but they're well above the numbers here.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we're just, I'll check the records on them. I know there's some adjustment to the referral letter, but as long as there's no additional variances, like Amanda said, if there's some that are not required anymore, and we'll just update the referral letter and I'll give you one for record. That's all.
Okay. So I think that, I think it's safe to move with the premise that they don't need those. They're obviously going at their own risk here if they're incorrect in their numbers. And, but I am stating as planning director, I'm confident in what's been submitted, that has been reviewed, and that it's been gone over. So
Those new floor plans we just showed though, Jaime, are those new since the last?
No,
time?
those are the January. So that's what I was looking. We actually emailed them over to Joe and everybody on January 27th. So
Okay,
it has changed from that set of drawings.
yes,
that's
been
what
around
I
a long
wanted
time.
to hear.
Okay, I think what probably happened is I was assuming there was another set, but if that's the set and it was calculated out, then it was just that the referral letter wasn't updated, and we'll do that.
Yeah, any of the changes were not directly related to the habitable or livable areas. Those units have all been the same since January. The only changes have been exterior facade architectural elements. So
All right.
Yeah, you know what, Jacqueline?
utility site.
Jacqueline, can you just maybe pull up those units and just kind of go through them again, just for posterity here, so there's questions.
We closed the public hearing.
I think it's okay to leave it right now. There's no rush to close the public hearing. You're still discussing the matter, Bob.
Okay.
Who's talking?
1 minute, I'm just trying to get to that sheet.
Oh, okay.
So, to be very frank, I forget which ones were originally in question. I'd have to go back, but you can see through all of these, everything's noted in blue. And that means that all of them do pass the requirements for the habitable area required. And we've shown both livable and habitable, and we do meet the requirements for all of them.
Yeah, so the submission that was trying to figure out which ones. It was the number 1 and number 3 units.
Yeah, and so that was in December of last year, and then in January we submitted with everything being, it was the December zoning board meeting where it emphasized that the habitable and livable area were extremely important to the board, and they wanted us to satisfy those requirements.
Yeah, so I think that the heart of what happened is that you took the number 1 units, which were originally 1 bedrooms, and converted them to studios, and the 2 bedrooms, or the number 3 were originally 2 bedrooms, and I think converted them to 1 bedrooms.
Yeah, and we reduced the number of units in the building at that time in order to accommodate that request. So that was when we reduced we eliminated 2 or 3 units at the time.
I think that was when you reduced the number of units. I was under the impression that maybe we were changing something since then, but.
No, it's all remained the same.
Okay, so that, I remember you reduced the number of units to make apartment sizes comply.
Any other comments from the board or the staff at this time?
The only comment is that we have Joe Trebelli here today. We obviously have Amanda here for the last possible day. So there's nothing at this point that precludes you from taking a vote tonight if you want to. If you'd like some clarification on the seeker process, I think Amanda would be, great at helping that if you want to get some more info there. If you'd like any sort of questions about some of the work that the engineering review did, we have Joe Tremelli here, so feel free to ask questions. If not, you're sort of in a position to take a vote if you'd like.
Okay, again, are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? Are there any other members of the staff or the board who wish to speak on this? If not, then I would like a motion to close the public hearing at this time.
So moved.
So moved by Olga, seconded by Kyle.
Oh, second Kyle, just so it's on the record.
Yeah, seconded by Kyle. Do we need a roll call for this, or can we do it by unanimous consent?
Do it by unanimous consent.
No one has any problem, then at this time, we're closing the public hearing. And I have a question. Amanda, do we need to go through the list for each variance, or can we do them as a group?
You have some very different variances here. So you have coverage, you have the build 2 line, you have parking.
You want,
So
so
it
you
would make sense.
want to do each of the 3 separately? Is that what you prefer?
There's 4.
4. Okay.
It would make for a cleaner record, because otherwise you're gonna get all jumbled.
I think that there's technically 5 because height and stories are different.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
We can combine height and stories, though.
I'd like to propose.
In your discussion, I think it's fair to combine those, yes.
Great. So Amanda, why don't you pick one and start?
Okay, let's start with height/story. So the first factor, whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the area variance. And again, they're going for 3.5 stories and how many feet?
So the slope of the property is different throughout. So they need a 17-foot 3-inch variance based off the lowest point in the property to the highest point of the roof. However, the southeast corner, I think, is 20 feet higher than the northwest corner. And so at that corner, the southeast corner, I think there's no variance at all. And obviously on the northwest corner, there's a 17-foot 3-inch variance. So
does Jacqueline maybe have like a visual that she can pull up of this particular?
yes, she's got nice halo diagrams showing this exact nuance.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so it's 17 feet 3 inches, right?
Yes, that would be the variance.
Okay.
Yeah, as Jaime mentioned, we did put together diagrams where you can see there's portions of the building that are, that it's the orange is what we call a halo diagram, which is an average grade at all the corners. So you can see, as he mentioned, there's parts of the building, and actually I'll go to the orange one for clarification. There's parts of the building that are completely below that halo, and then there's other portions that that protrude above that. So it really does vary across the entirety of the site. 17.3 is the worst condition of any of them.
That's at its highest point.
Correct.
Okay, right. All right, so Bob, does that make sense? We good there?
Yes.
Okay, so I read the first factor, the undesirable change.
I would say no personally, because they're dealing with the topography, and the topography was the main determinant in the height variance needed, because on one side it's higher than the other side, but because one side's closer to the ground, that's what's causing this issue. So I would say no. Also, there's been an extensive opportunity for residents in the community to comment on whether it would be undesirable. And one of the biggest factors was form-based zoning, which they've agreed to hit the metric for, and the trees in the back for sightlines, which they also incorporated, fairly large trees. So I would say no for that reason.
Good. Do you have a comment on this?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, do they have a view from the adjacent structures on the two side streets, to show what they would be seeing with regard to this height variance?
They do. They also have a shadow diagram, so I don't know if you want to show what board member Spall asked for first, and then maybe also show them the shadow study.
George, do you have a comment on this?
I think that this is not a big problem that I see.
Okay.
But George, I can't hear you. It's probably not picking up on a record. If you could speak into the camera, yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't see this as being a big problem.
Nor do I. I think it's very much as Kyle said, it has to do with the topography. So next.
Okay, yeah.
Hold on. Michael is a board member, and he asked about the images. Could you share those, Jacqueline?
Yes.
And Bob and George, can you turn the volume up on your computer, because it's hard to hear both of you.
So we had done a study both along the streetscape, which was requested by the board, as well as the views from the rear along Watson and along Prospect. And also provided views that were requested looking into, and these were the ones directly from the backyards. So we demonstrated that based on the board's compliance, and demonstrated that there will be no view into the backyards as well. And then is the board, would the board like me to show? I know we've showed both those as well as the sun studies in the past. Do you want me to pull them up again?
I don't need to see them. That's up to any.
I don't need to see them again.
No, I don't.
No, I'm satisfied. I just wanted to see whether or not there'd be landscaping in order to block any possible visual interference.
You know, and Michael, this is Joe, the sponsor. We've met with the property owners to the rear on several occasions. Hence, you don't see any opposition here tonight, because they have an understanding of how we were going to mitigate those impacts for quite some time.
Okay, well, thank you so much for doing that.
You're welcome, Michael.
Okay. Can we move on
Okay,
to the next one, please?
Next factor is whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance.
No, because you would have to uniformly reduce the size of the building, and they've already reduced the number of apartments to accommodate changes we had requested in habitable and living space. So I would say no for that as well.
Olga, any
I
comment?
agree. I agree.
George?
Yes, agree.
Michael?
I agree too.
As do I. I think they've accommodated to the best of their ability. Next.
The requested area variance is substantial.
Anybody?
It is substantial at the maximum point for the one part of the building, but it isn't at all in other parts of the building, and very minor. So if you were to average the whole thing, I would also say no, looking at the entire structure as a whole.
Olga?
I agree.
Michael?
I agree too.
George?
I agree because of the topography, it's okay.
I agree as well. Next.
The proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district.
Kyle?
I was trying to give someone else an opportunity to speak, but I would also say no because they went through the secret process. And in terms of impervious surface at the rear for drainage or runoff, and so many things throughout the past months have been discussed about mitigating factors for any of the environmental concerns.
Olga?
Yeah, I've only been a witness to the hearings on this project since since January, but all environmental and all types of impacts from every angle were studied, questioned. We asked for them to accommodate, and it's been done. So I would agree.
Michael?
Yeah, the only issue I had is I thought I had read that this was the former nursery property and they had to do some cleanup on it first. Is that correct? The property on the hill? And I guess that's all been taken into account to this point?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the brownfield cleanup is a part of it. They're doing a specific type of brownfield cleanup, which is essentially like the maximum level of cleanup. That's a part of the seeker negative declaration. So they have stated on record that they will be doing it at that high level. And it's part of the review. It's part of the determination that was made by the planning board.
Good, thank you.
No problem. I agree. I think it's comprehensive. I agree with everything that's been said. And I think we can move on to the next thing.
The last factor is whether the alleged difficulty was self-created.
Okay, Olga, what do you think?
If I'm understanding correct, I mean, this is a choice to build on this particular property. So I would say yes, but I don't think that it matters. It's a vacant lot, and we're looking to make it something functional and productive for the community.
Kyle?
I agree with Olga. I would say yes, but it's not determinative.
Michael?
I completely agree. I think it's a great use for the property and the property needs to be developed in order to make the village whole.
George?
I agree.
As do I.
Okay, I think that for the next three, I'll go through the factors and I'll say one of the factors, and then you guys go that one variance, two variance, three variance, and then I'll do the next factor and then one variance, two variance, three variance. I think that might go a little faster. Is that okay with you?
Sure.
Okay. So, all right, let's do the first factor being an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the area variance. Let's consider how building coverage, off-street parking, and build to line are impacted by that factor.
All right, Michael? What do you think?
Is this gonna work?
Michael? Comments?
No comment.
Okay. Olga?
Just so we have, oh, sorry, Olga.
I think it'll work.
Okay. I mean, so the first factor, let's go building coverage first. Will an undesirable change be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties be created by the granting of the area variance for building coverage?
Right.
Prior to their changes and updates, no, or yes, but no longer based on all of the work they've done to address those concerns.
I agree.
Agreed.
George?
I agree also.
Michael?
I agree also.
So that the resolution is clear. Can someone, either Joe Augustinelli or Jacqueline, please tell me exactly what the building coverage variance is?
17.6% is the requested variance.
Thank you. All right. So the next variance for off-street parking, consider whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the area variance for how many spaces, Jacqueline?
39.
39 spaces.
I would say no. We had an opportunity to look at the DOT review and the traffic and mitigating factors.
I agree. George?
I agree.
Olga?
I agree.
Michael?
I agree. I think the fact that they got three entrances and exits allows them the parking to work.
They only have two? They do not have three?
Well, I thought they had one on each side street and one out the front.
Croton Avenue was, they do not have entrance or exit. I think it was
Okay.
just exit before, but they don't have it on Croton Avenue. The
Okay.
state did not like the idea, even though the state doesn't have jurisdiction there. BFJ, when they reviewed it, they also thought that it was not a good idea. And so based off of the independent review and the comments from the state, they removed that access there. And in its place, they put a sort of public plaza.
Okay, is that because of the hill in the area?
The sight line.
Sideline, exactly the sideline. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sort of.
Okay. Next.
Yes.
Okay, and then for this first factor, whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the area variance for the build to line. And Jacqueline, can you say again, just so we're all clear?
10 feet.
The 10-foot build to line variance. Everybody's clear what the build to line is, correct?
Olga, what do you think?
I would say no. It was, something that we had considered before, and again, adjustments have been made. So while that was a concern prior, I would say no now.
Michael?
I agree with Olga. I think that the adjustments have been made.
Kyle?
I would also say no, specifically because they don't have to abide by form-based zoning, and they chose to, which is a higher standard. And without that, this wouldn't necessarily be an issue. So no.
I agree as well. George?
I agree.
Okey doke. Next one.
Okay. So I just want to just quickly, Michael, you're more than welcome to continue deliberating with the board, but since this is your very first meeting, I just want to let you know that it wouldn't be appropriate for you to vote tonight. So just FYI, and I don't think you want to vote tonight, correct?
No, I do not want to vote tonight, no.
Good, we're all on the
Thank you,
same
Mike.
page.
I may ask questions though.
Yeah, no, that's fine, that's fine. Okay, good,
We appreciate your input. That's why you're here.
yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page. Okay, so the next factor, whether the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance for building coverage of 17.6%.
Not without further reducing the financial viability of the project, because they would have to remove more space because they can't make them smaller because they wanted to increase the size of the remaining units to meet habitable space.
Michael?
I agree.
Olga?
I agree.
George?
I agree too.
Me too.
Okay, same factor, whether the benefit sought can be achieved by some feasible method for parking spaces, for 39 parking spaces.
Olga?
Can you repeat that again?
Yeah, so can the benefit sought by the applicant be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance? So they're looking for a 39 parking space variance. Can they achieve the benefit they're looking for by some other method that's feasible for them to pursue?
I'm gonna say no. I believe the original number was a lot higher and they've had to make adjustments in order to meet the requirements for this variance. So if I'm understanding everything correctly, I'm gonna say no.
Kyle?
I agree with Olga.
Michael?
I agree also. I think that the fact that the building is primarily occupied by seniors will suitable parking has been provided.
George?
I agree.
I agree. And I think that the research they did and the solution they come up with is as good as it's going to get.
Yeah, I mean, that factor kind of gets at, is there some other place to add parking? Is there some, and I think that what you've all said is They basically considered other options. They've added parking in places they didn't have it originally, et cetera, et cetera. Okay.
Exactly.
Last,
They did a good job.
Yes. Next.
whether the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance for the 10-foot build to line. Can they?
I'm going to say no. I think this is what there is. George,
I agree. It's what there is.
Kyle,
I'm going to say no because they chose a higher standard to meet to better fit in with the area. So I'm going to say no. They're putting an additional burden on themselves.
exactly. Olga,
I agree. I think reasonable accommodations were made to meet everybody's concerns, as well as, you know, what was best for the investor.
Michael,
I say no also. I think that they've done the most with the property based on its limitations and size.
all right then. Next one, Amanda.
All right, so the next factor is whether the requested area variance is substantial. And so we'll go through, number one, the building coverage variance of 17.6%.
Yes, technically by foot as a percentage of the requirement, it is substantial, but I don't think it's determinative when you average it out over the entire building, as we discussed in, I think, the first factor.
Yeah.
Yeah, Olga.
I agree.
Michael.
Yeah, I agree. The building is basically put into the side of a hillside, and I think that they've done what they can with regard to the height.
Exactly.
George.
Yes, I agree.
I do as well.
Okay, so is the parking variance substantial?
The parking variance is also substantial, but again, we went through a lengthy process to add more spaces than there were originally. And considering the demographic of the intended population, seniors, and the studies that were done, I'd say no.
Yes, it is large, but it's what, yeah, it's not determinative. George.
I agree with you.
Olga.
I agree.
Michael.
I agree with Kyle.
Yes.
Okay, and is the build to line variance, 10-foot build to line variance substantial?
Yes, but they made that choice to better conform with the area, as we addressed in the last factor. So I would say yes, but not.
Can I just clarify, the fact that they've opted into the form-based code, I don't think you can keep giving them credit for the fact that they opted into the form-based code rather than using the underlying zoning. If you opt into the form-based code, you have to comply with the form-based code, and they're not. So I don't know. So if you can please find another way to
Good point. Good point. So I would say yes, but not determinative because it's not across the entire footprint of the building. And they've made adjustments around the perimeter to accommodate for that, one of the areas that's true for.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
I agree. It's substantial, but not determinative. And they absolutely made as much accommodation as they could. George.
I absolutely agree with you.
Olga.
I agree.
Michael.
I agree also.
All right. The next factor, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district for first building coverage.
No.
George, you said no?
No.
Okay. Kyle?
No, due to the appropriate drainage mitigation, but also due to the brownfield cleanup that they're going to engage in and was approved for.
I agree with that as well. Olga?
I agree.
Yeah. Michael?
I agree also.
Same factor, will it have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district for the 39 parking space variance?
No, it's all based on height. That doesn't change the footprint, so I would say no.
I agree as well.
I would say no as well.
I agree.
Michael?
I agree also.
And the same factor for the 10-foot build to line variance.
Yeah, no.
Exactly,
Yeah.
same thing, yes.
I would say, no, because that's not for the entire footprint again. And they've mitigated a lot of the concerns that were brought up during the entire process.
Yes. Olga?
I agree as well.
Michael?
I also agree.
Yes. They mitigated it as much as possible.
All right, and then the last factor, I'm sure everyone's very happy to hear that, is the alleged difficulty was self-created for building coverage.
Yes, but I don't think it's determinative.
I agree with you.
I would agree with Bob. In order to make this financially viable in the first place, there needs to be a certain number of units to provide all the amenities they have. So while I do say yes, I don't think it's determinative.
I agree to that as well.
Michael?
I also agree, and I also think that the unit size really needed to take into account the parking needs of the seniors. And they wouldn't have had that much space for parking without making the units the size that they did.
So for building coverage, it's not necessarily about unit size, it's, the coverage on the site as a whole.
Okay, I understand.
Okay, the same factor, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created for the 39 parking space variance.
I think it's the same thing. Yes, but it's not a determining factor.
I would say yes, and specifically adding on to what Olga said, in order to add more parking, they would have had to either reduce the number of rooms, which is probably not financially feasible, or they would have to build up, which would create a further height variance issue.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a compromise, I think they took into account all the different variables, and this solution was the most viable. George?
I agree with that, absolutely.
Michael?
I agree also.
And lastly, whether the build to line variance of 10 feet, whether the alleged difficulty in that situation is self-created.
Yes, but not determinative.
Exactly.
Agreed.
And yes, as well.
I agree with Kyle.
Yeah. Okie dokie. Where are we at now?
That's it. You did all the factors for all of the technically 5 variances.
Okay. Do we need separate motions for each of them, or can we do one? With all
We
of
can
them?
do one unless you have any conditions that you'd like to attach.
No. So we need a motion to grant these variances. And-
Do
Go ahead.
you want me to just say them?
Yes.
one more time? Okay,
Yes.
to grant the building coverage variance of 17.6%, to grant a parking variance for 39 spaces, to grant the build to line variance for 10 feet, and to grant the height/stories variance of 3.5 stories or 17.3 feet.
Mhm. Moved by Olga, who seconded?
Second, Kyle.
Kyle seconded. Roll call vote?
Okay. Bob Dwyer,
Aye.
Kyle Beckley,
Aye.
George Bailing,
Aye.
and Olga Montez.
So it's approved unanimously. Congratulations, y'all. This was a long haul. You guys did great. Really.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and all the members of the board. I have to tell you, it's been a pleasure to work with this board, and I look forward to building a beautiful job for you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
What's next, y'all?
Thank you.
Marlene can come
Thank
back.
you. Bye.
now.
Marlene can be back now, right?
Yep.
Yeah, let me call her. I'm not sure if she's actually listening, so she may not know.
I actually just texted her to let her know, because she had asked me before to just let her know.
Oh,
Yeah.
Hi,
Thank you,
Marlene. I
Olga.
give you back the floor. and the chair and the table.
And the rug.
And the rug, okay, thank you. So we are up to ZBA 27-2021 for State Street. This was, the applicant is seeking variances for the required number of off-street parking spaces. I do believe that there was a new parking study done March 28th, 2022. Is there anyone here to speak on this? And Jaime, can you just give us an update?
Yes, so the quick rundown is that the applicant is requesting a parking variance regarding the rehabilitation and conversion of a house into a restaurant. The house occupies the bulk of the property, so there's no space on the property to provide any parking. There are 15 spaces required as determined by the number of, I think, sort of like staff plus seats in the restaurant, but there will be none provided in the presentation they have now. And so they're returning to present a parking study, and we have Frank Feliciotto from Croton Ave, who prepared the parking study, as well as JB Hernandez and Peter Chernoff. So I'm gonna bring them in.
Okay, welcome, gentlemen, welcome.
Good evening.
I don't know who's leading this. JB, Mr. Hernandez, are you leading off this one, or Mr. Chernoff?
We can both, is Peter on?
Yeah, I mean, either or, it's fairly straightforward. I think we fairly well introduced what we're looking to do in the last meeting where we saw you. It was requested that we go back and get a more recent parking study because we were attempting to just sort of present parking studies that had already been done in the past. We've now done it. Frank is here to present that to you. His findings are that there is ample parking to support this use. I think that's probably the most crucial aspect of the conversation right now. I don't see him on here, however.
He's here.
Oh, there you
He
are.
is here.
There you are.
I'm here, Peter.
I'm somewhat blind these days. Hi. So, I mean, JB, unless you think there's something we should add, I think maybe just move right to the parking study.
Well, I think we should want to clarify that with the parking study, that we are taking a conservative approach and we are including, not sure if some of the board members are new, but we did present in the past another project that we are coming back with, which is 65 Main Street. And so we did include that in the study, so we don't have to add, or we will revisit this in the future. So we included that as a future project and as a more conservative approach to the parking study.
Yeah, I mean, the study that you prepared does actually show two different sets of counts. One that's oriented towards this project, and the other one that's oriented towards 65 Main Street. So I'm assuming that Frank is not going to have any issue presenting on the component of that study that pertains to 4 State Street.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll take it away. Thank you all. Frank Feliciotto with Croton Manning for the record. Nice to see you all. We did produce that March 28th parking study, and as JB pointed out, it was done with the intent of looking at both 4 State and 65 Main, both of which include quality restaurants, totaling 108 seats between the two projects. But we're here tonight to focus on 4 State, which is a 40-seat restaurant served by 5 employees, which results in the need for 15 parking spaces, which, as you heard, the site is not able to provide. So we are asking for a full relief of the 15 spaces. And similarly on the 65 main application, although I'm not going to focus on it tonight, I want to mention that 68th Street restaurant is being contemplated there, along with 6 employees and 5 residential units necessitating 31 spaces. So the parking study was based on a total parking demand of 46 spaces, 15 for 4 State and 31 for 65 Main. And so the analysis was sought to look at parking within the nearby vicinity, and I'll get into that. I'll present the map to walk you through exactly where we investigated parking, but basically trying to determine if there's adequate public parking in the nearby vicinity within a reasonable walking distance to accommodate not only the 4 State use, but also the 65 Main proposed use. So if I may, I'll just present the study area map. If you can see my screen, this is a map we put together that illustrates a 5-minute walking distance for the average person to walk. The blue dot in the center of the page represents the 65 Main Street property. The red dot represents the 4 State Street property. And as you can see, there's quite a bit of overlap given how close those two properties are geographically. So the red area represents the 5-minute walking distance that one would have for 4 State, blue for the 65 Main Street property, and then purple is conveniently, if you know your primary colors, purple is where the overlap occurs. So we investigated and identified all public parking within that color shed that you see on the page.
If I can just interject, your study references the fact that actually 5 minutes is less than what would commonly be an accepted walking time in your field, correct?
That's right. We typically look at a 6 to 8 minute walk as generally acceptable. However, based on prior discussions with this board on other applications, I think this board was more interested in seeing a shorter walk. And so we've reduced that down to a 5-minute walk. And that accounts for how people would walk. Obviously, Ossining has some terrain, it has some topography. So what appears to be close may not really be close. If you could imagine being on Hunter and trying to get to State, you have a decent walking distance. So it does account for that sort of topography and elevation change as well. But a total of 909 parking spaces are in this zone. And obviously they have a litany of regulations associated with them. So we were attuned to the fact that there's 2-hour spaces, there's 3-hour spaces, there's station tag parking, there's overnight tag parking, there's general tag parking, and then there are spaces with no regulation whatsoever. And we recognize that not every single one of those 909 spaces is going to be an available space for someone coming to the restaurant. Obviously, if someone's coming to the restaurant, they likely are not going to park down at the station unless they conveniently have a parking tag because they're from the area. So we eliminated, as you'll see later on, we eliminated a good portion of this study area as being legitimate for people going to these restaurants. We studied a total of 6 time periods, consuming upwards of 10 hours on 2 days. So we looked at a weekday, it was a Wednesday in February, between the hours of 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. to account for what would be a lunch activity for these restaurants, 5 p.m. to 9 p.m., which would cover the dinner time period, and then 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. The reason for that is because, number one, you might have a late night activity at a bar in the restaurants, but you could also have parking demand generated by the residential component of 65 Main Street. And I realize that's not before you this evening, but that is the reason why we looked at the overnight period of 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. And we studied those exact same periods on a Saturday as well to account for differences in demand during weekend versus weekday. What we found is that the existing parking utilization in the area ranged from 30% to 63% based on time period. And what we found, not surprisingly, is that the weekday midday and the Saturday midday periods experienced the highest levels of demand. So what we did was we prepared a series of heat maps that I'll scroll through now. We don't need to look at all of them, but this is an example of a heat map where we essentially color-coded all the streets and parking lots within the study area based on utilization. And so, for example, if you're familiar with the Brander Street lot, my office is right behind or right in front of Brander Street lot. You know that it is always full. And therefore, the Brander Street lot is coded in red because it's essentially near 100% at all times throughout the day. So obviously you have varying degrees of utilizations throughout the village downtown. The station lot, although it's not fully relevant here, you can see that it is not as utilized as it once was prior to COVID. This is definitely the COVID and work from home effect taking place, the light green color at the station. So you can see how parking demand varies throughout the village throughout the course of the day. This happens to represent weekday parking utilization during the actual peak hour of 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. on that weekday. And you can see as I pass through these, that the Brander Street lot is always red. So that covers existing. What we sought to do then is determine if the available parking demand or available parking supply rather in this area could accommodate the guests and employees of the proposed restaurants. And what we did was we reduced the available supply in this area to account for portions of the parking supply that would not be available to restaurant patrons. For example, I said it before, but the station parking down by the train. Probably not a candidate for someone who's from out of town who wants to go out to dinner. That person probably doesn't have a tag and wouldn't be able to park on, in the station. Similarly, there are general tag parking for daytime use throughout the village downtown. The Brander Street lot being an example of that. We assumed that a restaurant patron would not have a tag and therefore could not park in a general tag parking area. So we reduced the supply down to be realistic for a restaurant patron or an employee. What that did was it increased the utilization, obviously, of the area because we're removing supply. But what we found is that there is still a minimum of 136 usable spaces, and that's during the critical period of the weekday midday, for restaurant use within a 5-minute walk. Still 136 available spaces in the area. Now the restaurants together require 38 of the total ask of 46. And again, focusing on 4 State Street requires 15 spaces. So of that 136 minimum reserve supply in the area, even if everyone came to the restaurant at the same time and all 15 spaces were utilized and in demand, you would still have over 120 spaces in the downtown area available for whatever other uses or what other area parking demands there are. We did not take any credits, for instance, any transit credits, but presumably someone could take the train to Austin and walk up the hill and go to dinner or go to the bar. We did not take any credit for that. Similarly, the overnight period before the 3 a.m. parking prohibition goes into effect, there are 259 spaces available in the subject area, more than enough to accommodate both restaurants as well as any spillover from the residential associated with 65 Main Street. But I will point out that project, and you'll see it at some point, hopefully in May. That project does provide 11, or is proposing 11 off-street parking spaces to accommodate the residential component. So based on this study, and again, it considered 20 hours of study, 909 parking spaces. We were keen to adjust for fire hydrants and driveways and curbside regulations, as I pointed out, to make sure we weren't double counting any spaces or taking credit for areas that aren't legal to park in. But we do believe that the 15 spaces that this restaurant needs at 4th State would be adequately accommodated by what's available in the area.
Thank you. And I think I'm jogging my memory since it's been a couple of months. I believe the public hearing for this was open previously.
I do not know. Maybe Jamie knows.
I think it
Jamie?
was, yes, because a couple of people spoke.
We did have comments from the public. And also think there is a lot of comments that have been submitted, and I think those are on the website.
I know there are written comments, but it was just a matter of protocol. So Jamie, I believe that we adjourned the public hearing and did not close it. I'm just thinking in my head.
That's correct.
Okay.
So we need a motion to reopen the public hearing.
Yep.
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
If there's no objection to opening the public hearing, then we will, by unanimous consent, the public hearing will reopen at this time. Is there, Jaime, anyone to speak on this project?
No, there's only one person here and their hand is not raised.
Okay, then may I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved, Kyle.
So Kyle and George.
Yes. No, Kyle and Olga.
Kyle and Olga.
Okay.
Can I just say one thing which
If-
goes beyond the parking
wait.
study? Sorry.
Wait. If there's no objection to closing the public hearing is now closed by unanimous consent. We do have the public hearing, we do have the parking study. Mr. Chernoff, I'll give you one more brief statement so we can move forward on this.
It is simply this, that I sincerely do not actually want anyone to show up in a car. The goal of this is a sustainable, walkable downtown. I sincerely hope that at least the majority of people showing up will be showing up on foot, on bike, or some other way. Next week is Earth Day, and these are real conversations we're having as a village, and it's relevant to this project and to 65 Main and to the rest of what we're trying to do downtown right now. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, sir. No problem. Thank you. Kyle, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, I don't want to take this long. I know it's late. The only concern I have is accessibility. With no parking spots, anybody with mobility issues who can't physically walk from a handicap spot that's available maybe at the post office or even further away if you're on the hill for Main Street, that would be, how are you accommodating for anybody with mobility issues?
There is a parking spot directly in front if the village would allow it. I, would of course like to have that designated as a handicap spot. It's not something we really looked at. It is level. There's not a slope issue there.
Yeah, there is no, we have no.
I don't know, Frank, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've definitely seen municipalities properly sign an on-street parking space for ADA accessibility. That's certainly been done. I think Ossining does that in certain areas as well, so that could be considered. I think, in the downtown area, there are a number of other restaurants, coffee shops that similarly don't have any parking. And, it would be incumbent on that person to make their way from Market Square or some of the other on-street areas. But no, I'm sympathetic to the issue. And I think, if the village is amenable to it, it could be considered on the street relatively close to the restaurant.
Yeah, more so for Main Street because the slope is such that it's not accessible. The sidewalk is not accessible. So they can't go from another place down that sidewalk. They have to arrive at the location. The State Street is not really an issue.
So it's a great point. With 65 million, I know it's not in front of you this night, but it is the intent to provide 11 off-street spaces, and we would only need 8 of them for the residential component of the site per the code. So there are a few spaces that could be designated for for ADA use on a part-time basis, potentially for the restaurant.
Yeah, I know we're on the one, so that's just a heads up for next time because I will absolutely be asked.
Right. Thank you. It's a great comment.
Right. And
Yeah.
as far as the parking in front of the building, that is a village issue that would have to be taken up separately.
Understood.
Yeah, a question for Frank. I see you said in your parking studies that you took into account metered spaces. Did those meter spaces, were you assuming the restaurant patrons were going to feed the meters every 2 hours, or did they take into account whether or not those spaces would be included or not?
We didn't, to answer your question, we did include the 2-hour spaces, as well as the 3-hour spaces in Market Square that aren't charged. Typically, quality restaurants see turnover anywhere between 1 and 2 hours. So I think a stay of over 2 hours would be unusual, but yes, they would have to then go back out to their car and feed the meter.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from?
I have a question.
Yes, Ola.
I think I did hear Frank take into consideration all the other restaurants and businesses in the area of Main Street, right at the intersection of State Street. But I may have missed if you took into consideration residents of that area who already struggle with parking as part of your study.
Yes, so when we go out and count, we're counting in real time. So whatever activity is on the street and in the lots, that's representative of everything that's going on in Ossining at that time. The reason why we choose certain periods is to zero in on periods of activity that we know are going to be high, like lunch, dinner, for instance, for a restaurant. For residential, typically peak demand is overnight because your home and your car is either parked on the street or in a driveway or in a garage. So that's why we did the overnight study between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. So you'll see in that particular case, anywhere where there's overnight tag parking, you'll see that very high and active. But for instance, Market Square, there's virtually no one in because you actually can't park there from 12 midnight to 8 a.m. So the variation of parking study by period helps to capture all the different competing demands in the village. And there are many, as you're noting, between residential and restaurants, and there's obviously businesses that are not restaurants like Open Door, for instance, that contribute a lot of activity in the downtown area, but that's all been included.
And I also would hope that you took into account all of the drop-off pickups of the Children's Center, which is right up the street, which has a lot of parking during the day. especially on the State Street corridor.
That's correct.
Okay, if there's no other comments from the board, I guess, Amanda, we can move forward.
So there's the variance for max building coverage and for parking spaces.
I thought they took off the,
Tell me if I'm wrong.
I thought they took off the area. Did they not, I'm going backwards in my brain because I know it's been a couple of months, but I thought that that was just for the front and there was a change to the facade and that was removed?
No, I think the variance that we no longer have on the list, and I think Joe can, it was the lot size because an existing non-conforming, and originally I think we spoken of having a variance for the lot size, but that's an existing non-conformity. So we do have lot coverage, building coverage, and the number of parking spaces.
Yeah, so I think that the original referral letter, there was some confusion between impervious coverage and building coverage. So in this instance, the deck does not count towards impervious coverage, but because it's structure attached to the building, does count as building coverage. So the building coverage is actually higher than the impervious coverage in this instance. So that's why the building coverage remains as an issue.
Okay. All right. So just to go
about myself, so
and I was like, I remember. Okay. So I think that we just to make everything clear, can we just go over the numbers of the coverages that we will be looking at?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I know it's
not on the referral letter, so presuming that your zoning worksheet is correct, JD, do you want to tell us?
Yes, it's 6% is the amount of lot coverage.
Not lot coverage, building coverage.
Building coverage, I'm sorry, building coverage. I misspoke.
And okay. And how many spaces is the parking variance again? So I'm
15.
I think it's 15.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so how do you want to do it, Marlene? Do you want to do it together or you want to do it separately?
If it's okay with the board, do you want to do it together? Okay, I see some yeses. I see some nods, yes.
Sorry, David, your numbers are incorrect. I'm sorry. You said 6%. That's not correct. Those numbers are flipped on your plan. The building coverage is 87% and what's permitted is 40%. The impervious coverage is 46% and what's permitted is 60%. So your impervious coverage is fine. The building footprint, just with all of the, yeah, we went through this before, but actually they're incorrect on your sheet, but the numbers are 87% building coverage where 40 is permitted.
Okay.
What do you?
So that means
Can you show the board?
they need a 47% variance?
Yes, it's big.
Yeah.
Jaime, can you pull up whatever you're looking at so the board can see?
So just to kind of give you some context here, so this is the building, and so this is the actual building, but the way that the code is written, I think, Joe Agacinelli can explain this better than I can, but the proposed deck is considered part of the building, although decks don't increase impervious surface under the reading of the code. And so even though it is part of the building and it increases the total percentage of coverage by building, it doesn't increase the impervious coverage. And so the numbers that you see here, and I'm gonna use my annotate pen here so that I can clear it up. These numbers should be flipped, right? So, or not those two numbers, I'm sorry.
Those numbers. Yep.
These numbers should be flipped. So the 87 refers to the building, which includes the deck. And the building coverage is supposed to be 40. And the maximum impervious coverage is 60%, but the total impervious coverage is actually the size of the structure, not including the deck, which is only 46%.
I think if you show the next sheet where it shows the proposed deck, it kind of makes it clear.
Yeah. Okay.
If you go one more to show that's the foundation, I guess that's.
Which one?
This, it will be not that one, the one below.
Okay.
It shows the extent of the deck. You see the dark line that shows the deck size.
So all this here.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I mean, we should point out that when we're looking at these percentage, please keep in mind that the lot size is 2,578 square feet. When for this zoning, it should have been 40,000 square feet in existing non-conforming. So this proportion of the lot is more along with the VC zoning than with the waterfront.
Do we have that all settled now? And we can go through the
Yes.
project?
Mhm.
Good, Marlene?
Okay, I'm ready.
Um,
Everyone else okay with what was just discussed? I just want to make sure it's clear.
I just have one question. On JB, just looking at that, is that correct that the building coverage is 87% for that whole lot?
Yeah. If you
Okay.
count the deck,
Seems like a lot.
if you count the deck as a coverage, yes. But again, take into account that if this was in the VC zone, it would have been 100% coverage. And this is a waterfront where you expect a lot this size to be 40,000 square feet. And we have 2,578.
No, I hear you. I was just saying, when you look at it, it appears that it's not 87% coverage. It appears to be less, but.
No, actually, no, most of the rear of the yard is covered with the deck. So you have a little space there and you have a little space on the side.
Yeah, the lot actually drags to the side in that sort of triangle towards the rear. It's that urban renewal area to the side is sort of juts to the side into it cuts us off.
Okay.
I think what Joe is saying is that if you look at it, it would have been more advantageous for you to use the lower number because it doesn't look like it's covering 87% of the entire property.
Right.
It looks more about like 60%.
Something like that, right?
Yeah.
No, okay.
No.
No, it's the.
But we don't own that land to the
Yeah.
right.
Right.
That's actually village land.
They don't own the
Okay.
land to the right and there's something to the left. So yeah, there's only like a little.
Okay, if that's the numbers, and that's right. We just double checking.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions from the board? Okay, Amanda, ready?
Whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of an 87% building coverage variance and a 15% parking variance.
87 or 47?
47%. The total was 87, right? The total was 87 and the
JB,
required.
let Joe tell me, please.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, JB.
Just let Joe say it.
Yeah, if it's 40% is what it's maximum permitted and you're 87, then you need a 47% variance.
Fine, I misstated. The variance is 47%. Will there be an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood?
No, that house looks very run down. I drive by it almost every day. It will definitely improve the character of the neighborhood.
I agree.
And I know there's the parking space issue too, but since they don't have parking spaces, it doesn't negatively impact the character because there's no change.
I think if they upgrade the look of the building, it will actually bring a boom to that end of State Street and the Main Street area. So hopefully there will be more walkable people in that corridor. So to that end, I would say it would improve the character of the neighborhood.
I would agree with that.
Yes, me too.
The next factor is whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the 2 area variances.
I think with this property, just looking at the overall shape of the property itself, the village land to one side and adjacent property on the other, I think they're limited to how the scope of how they can change or maneuver any building or parking on this on the lot itself.
I would agree with
Agree.
As do I.
I've been a little hesitant to say anything because I don't travel that area that well, that much. I tend to stay more on the main roads as opposed to the back roads. But what little I do know is that it's so far is not a very desirable area to travel unless you're trying to take a shortcut from the main traffic on Spring Street. So I would have to agree that it can only improve what's already there.
The only question I had was, I just pulled it up on Google Maps here. I see that there looks like a gray 2-family house going further up State Street away from the proposed restaurant. And it looks like that the residents probably use that as a parking spaces for themselves. Has it been taken into account whether or not the restaurant patrons or the restaurant workers might try to use that particular driveway? This would be going up State Street.
No, I mean, they that would park on the neighbor's driveway?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the neighbor would call Bob's Towing and have them immediately towed. That's what I would do if someone parked on my driveway.
Gotcha.
I mean, it could happen, but that's, a crazy thing to do. I mean, anybody.
And the other question was that, as Marlene pointed out, there appears to be village plantings along Main Street. I assume that those will remain and that's not affected by this project.
Yeah, I mean, we have no ability to touch them.
Okay.
And if Michael, if I'm correct, I believe the parking area you're talking adjacent to that actually belongs to the property behind that, the old Elks Club, which I think is 80 Main Street.
Oh, I didn't realize you were talking about, you're talking about the big parking lot?
Yeah, but there's a small driveway right next,
that belongs to my neighbors to the left.
80 Main Street.
Oh, it does belong to the neighbors. It belongs to the neighbors to the left.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Okay.
And I would note that if the village ever decide, if Peter decided he wanted to add some nice, pretty plants to that village-owned property right next to him, I'm sure that there's some people in Village Hall that would be willing to listen to his friendly donation.
It's pretty well covered with trees and things. I mean, I think it's more a long-range discussion of should that be a sitting area as people come up the street or something? It's kind of nothing right
All right, so should we move on?
now. Sure.
Yes, please.
Whether the requested area variances are substantial?
It is definitely substantial.
Go ahead, Kyle.
Sorry, Marlene. It's
No, go
definitely
ahead.
substantial, but I don't, there is no place for a variance to provide parking on the premises. So it's either you approve it or you don't. So it is substantial, but I don't think it's determinative unless we vote the whole thing down.
I agree with Kyle.
Yeah, Kyle, right on.
Michael,
I agree
you're
also.
muted. Okay. Olga?
I also agree.
Does that also
I
apply to building coverage?
And that does apply to the building coverage as well. That it is substantial. But again, the shape of the property limits how, and the amount of space limits how limits the amount or any change that can go forward. So 47%, though it is a substantial, only improves the use of the building.
I agree. I mean, it's no longer going to be used as residential, so technically you don't really need the yard space. So the deck, you know, being the size that it's being proposed is only appropriate.
Next.
Okay. The proposed variances will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district.
I would say no, not negative. It'd be, they went through, this didn't have to go through a secret process because, yeah.
No.
So
No,
I
it
would
doesn't
say,
have to go here, but it does have to go for site plan approval. So there's still more to go after
Yeah.
this.
at this time, I haven't seen anything presented that would warrant anything other than no environmental impact for our consideration.
I'm going to kind of lean a little bit to the other side, Kyle, only that I think there's going to be an environmental impact with the number of cars that are already impacting, especially the State Street corridor, which is a high, has a high traffic parking issue on a daily basis, because there are some businesses between the post office and the daycare and other businesses in that area that limit the amount of parking going up that street. However, it is not, in my estimation, a determinative factor that people will have to find parking somewhere within the area to the best of their ability.
You're not a rubber stamp organization. Thanks, Marlene.
Okay, and the final factor is whether the alleged difficulty was self-created.
I would say yes, but it's not determinative. Again, this is one of those things where it's a choice.
I agree with Olga in terms of the building variance, but I would say for the street parking, it is self-created because you're choosing to put a business there that requires a set number of parking. But again, I don't think it's determinative unless we're looking at the whole issue, because there's no way to put parking on the lot itself.
I agree with Kyle. Exactly.
I agree with Kyle as well, and Olga with looking at this project.
I agree also.
I agree with Kyle.
All of the factors.
All of the factors. Okay, with that being said, it looks like this project is being approved for a, let me get this right, 47% area variance and 15 parking spaces variance. May I have a motion?
So moved, Bob.
Second, George.
I'm sorry. Moved by George, seconded by, no, moved by Bob, seconded by George. I was thrown off because I saw George Hernandez light up, so I just want to make sure I got the right George.
George Hernandez doesn't have a vote.
No, he does not. Roll call vote.
Marlene Cheatham,
Aye.
Kyle Beckley,
Aye.
George Bailey,
Aye.
Bob Dariah,
Aye.
and Olga.
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. Thank you all for coming
Thank you.
You,
Thank you. Have a good evening.
thank you, good evening.
and good evening.
Very excited about this.
Thank you very much.
No, the vote is over.
On to the planning board. Have fun.
I'm excited. I got a bar I can walk to.
It's not there yet. They still have more to go, Bob. So have a good evening, y'all. Our ZBA 04-2022 83 State Street, is that on for tonight? Still? I can't hear you, Jaime.
Yeah, it's not on for tonight. We're working on trying to set up the meeting with the applicant so they get their application in order. We haven't gotten that set up just yet, but hopefully we will soon. And at that time, we'll be able to get back to you. They did do some revisions to the plan, but they were just not clear enough to make a determination about what the full extent of the variance would be. And there are some questions about whether or not they're going to be able to afford to make those changes. So we need to discuss that with the applicant so we can get a better handle on what's going on. And so hopefully next month they'll be back.
So should we make a motion to adjourn this to the May meeting?
Please.
Yes, okay. May I have a motion to adjourn this to the May meeting?
So moved.
And may I have a second?
A second.
So made by George, second by Olga. If by unanimous consent, we can do unanimous consent on this one.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. If there's no objection, then we will, by unanimous consent, move ZBA 04-2022 83 State Street to the May meeting. Motion carried. There is one adjourned matter, ZBA 23-2021 34 State Street. Mr. Durayo has recused himself from this project, so he is unable to vote on this.
Marlene,
And
I meant to email you yesterday. You don't need to take a vote on this. You can just say that you're removing it from the agenda because the
okay.
application is now moved.
So for this, so we don't need to vote that we're removing it from the agenda. We're just stating that it's removed.
Yeah,
I thought that's why we didn't have enough people the last time, so we couldn't.
I had told you that you had to vote on it last time, but Linda, do you want to say something?
Sure. I think, and we've spoken to Stuart about this as well. The application requested that the building permit be reinstated, and the building permit has been reinstated. So therefore, they've gotten the relief and the application is moot.
Yeah,
Okay.
Linda's of the Linda's.
May I just ask, I guess, ask a
Sure.
question just from Linda and Amanda. I know that this project is an issue, and I'll use that word. I would ask if it would just make sense to remove it by vote, just so that we're clean on it and not just remove it. If that would
it'll
make
you,
sense.
if it will make you more comfortable, you can certainly take a vote on it, but you're removing it because it's moot.
Okay.
That's
All right,
fine.
I
You can
don't.
take a vote.
I just have this feeling that it would come back to haunt us in the future. But I'm fine with it if the board. How about if I do it this way? ZBA 23-2021 34 State Street. The applicant request is seeking an appeal to reinstate a building permit. At this point in time, the building permit has been issued. So this matter should be removed. Should be removed from the agenda at this time. If there is no objection from the board, by unanimous consent, this matter will be removed from our agenda. Since there is no objection, this matter has now been removed from the agenda. Does that work?
Mhm.
Okay. I believe that is the last thing on our agenda for tonight.
Marathon, good job.
One last thing. I just want to say thank you to Amanda for 2 years of extremely hard work. I want to thank you for all of the help that you've given me as a planner, helping to make my life smooth, and my work experience is very helpful. You've been a shoulder for me to lean on, and I am going to miss talking to you about 10 or 15 times a week. I've gotten to know your work a lot of these last couple of years, and it's good to know you, and hopefully I get to see you sometime in the future when you're doing big things in DC.
Thank you. Very nice.
We wish you the best of luck.
Thanks so much.
Yes.
Really appreciate it.
Piggyback on Jaime and Joe. I came into this with, like a deer in headlights, as we all do when we're starting on a board, and we're just kind of thrown in. And I have to say, Amanda, thank you for your wise counsel. Linda, watch out. Because I am going to bug you to no end.
No problem.
I hate, I think that it's an easy way to ask the questions, to look, as you could tell, I look at her face and go, am I doing the right thing? So I read her well. So now I'll be looking at you going, I don't see any change in her face. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Amanda does not have a poker face, so I need to be able to learn how to see if I'm heading in the right direction. It's now I'll have to look to Joe, who will be rolling his eyes at me, but that's okay. But as we move forward, thank you so much, Amanda. I will have to walk the streets of DC till I find you, but we will definitely miss you. Anytime you want to pop up just to say hello, we will welcome a hello.
Thank you. And I will definitely be following the news and asking to see where all these projects end up that I've been so involved in for all these years. And you say that I provide wise counsel, but Linda is many years wiser, so I know that you'll be in good hands. Thank you all
Thank you
so
for your
much.
patience and your kindness and your sage advice. You certainly helped me learn and understand the workings better. And Lord knows you have to have the patience of a saint to have me around. And I am going to miss you more than you know.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate all of that. So nice.
And may the force be with you.
Thank
Now
you.
that everyone's doing it, thank you for keeping me in check. I mean, us in check.
I do what I can. You guys are all lovely people, very capable board, and you'll be doing great things, I'm sure.
Did we get a motion to adjourn yet?
No.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes, all in favor of adjourning. If there's no objection by unanimous consent, I would say everyone have a good night, and we will see you in May.
Good night.
Good night. I'll
Good
see
night,
you on
everyone.
Amanda, I'm going to connect with you on
Bye,
LinkedIn.
Amanda.
Bye, Amanda. Thank you.
Bye, Amanda.
Jamie, just a reminder that the minutes for the Croton Avenue project go to Bob for signature.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, no.
all right.
Amanda, I'm going to find you on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Trust me, I'm walking down to Washington. She just don't know.
I'll be watching out for you, Marlene. Bye.
All right. Good night.
Night.